Back Home, powered by Cooperative Bank.
Kenyans in the diaspora, are they required to pay tax?
Yes and no. For a Kenyan citizen who works abroad, we look at, number one, they are not living in Kenya. They are working abroad and living abroad. So that basically means the only obligation under the law is for them to file tax returns. And I think it is important for us to distinguish that filing of tax returns is actually a legal obligation. But it does not necessarily mean that filing means payment of taxes. And so in that case, anyone who is employed outside of Kenya, living outside of Kenya, is not obligated to pay any tax to the Kenyan government. Kenya runs what we call a source-based taxation system. Where was the income made from? Under this system, there is what we call foreign income. Foreign income in this case is where the income has been earned outside of Kenya. And so where the income has been earned outside of Kenya, there is no obligation to pay tax. However, there is an exemption for income earned outside Kenya. There is another angle that is that of residency, because if the income is made outside of Kenya, then the law will look at whether the person who's earning this income was a resident in Kenya at the time when they were making that income outside of the country. The law anticipates a number of scenarios when it comes to the description of who would be a resident in Kenya. And the first scenario is where you have a permanent residence here, or you have a permanent abode here in Kenya, and you are present in the country at any given period of the year of income. The second scenario is where you do not have a permanent abode in Kenya, but you are in Kenya for at least 183 days in that particular year of income. And then the third scenario is where you have been in the country, or rather in Kenya, for at least 122 days, averagely for the last 3 years. If you meet any of these criteria, then you are considered to have been a resident in Kenya. And that basically means that there is a tax obligation on you. You have to pay tax on income, even though it was made outside of Kenya.
Quite fascinating. But I'm sure Kenyans in the diaspora will want me to ask, with this being put in place, are there any relief that have been considered for Kenyans in the diaspora?
Is something we call the double taxation agreements. And double taxation agreements are basically arrangements between different governments in different jurisdictions to ensure that people do not suffer double taxation, so to speak. Then that basically means that you only need to prove that this particular tax, let's say for example income tax, that I'm obligated to also pay, let's say in the US, and the US has a double taxation agreement with Kenya. Once you provide evidence that you have paid tax in any of the two jurisdictions, then you enjoy the foreign tax credit.
Now, let's go to a unique category of individuals. These are people who are not employed. These are people who have businesses. And the businesses are here in Kenya, even though they're resident elsewhere. Does the law take into account such people?
Because companies are also considered to be official persons. If the company is registered in Kenya, then it is considered to be a resident of Kenya. And that basically means that they have an obligation to pay the 30% corporation tax to the Kenyan government. There are other instances where it is entirely a foreign company, but has presence here in Kenya and has been here for maybe more than 6 months. That is considered a permanent establishment. They are required to pay non-resident corporate income tax of about 37.5%.
Okay. Now, anyone who is watching and has heard what you have to say, what advice would you tell them, even as they're outside there making the best for them?
Number one is to just encourage the Kenyans outside there to keep abreast with what is happening locally. But more importantly, just to avoid those unnecessary costs in the form of penalties, like failure to file tax return. It is one of those very easy processes. If you have to pay whatever amount of money, 20,000 for a company is on the high. 2,000 bob, maybe over a period of 10 years, is still a significant amount of money. But these are, I think, penalties that can be avoided simply by the knowledge and just filing your tax returns on time.
Cooperative Bank. We are you.